First of all, I need to tell you that I have stage fright. You see, standing up here on stage takes me back to when I was a little girl in school, presenting to all the other girls in class. And they were laughing at me because I was not like the other girls. I was into boy stuff. I liked computers. So, if you're different, you get picked on. That's just how the world works. But I loved computers so much that right around that time, at 11 years old, I started programming in PHP. So I'm here to share my story, the good and the bad, because PHP and I, we grew up together. So who in here ever used PHP 4? Quite a lot of you. Before PHP 5 came out, this is just a way of seeing who's old. Who thought it was painful? Not many. I really didn't, because I loved PHP so much. You get this excitement as a kid of doing something you never thought was possible. And PHP enabled that for me. It was so amazing. And I also always loved RPG games. I felt like programming is a little bit like playing an RPG game. So you start at level 1. It's super easy. Everything is fun, and you get into the game, and you level up so fast. You get so much experience, and super fun. Then at some point, you have a character that you hopefully quite like, and the leveling up is slower, and it's not as fun. So you try something like starting a new character, like TypeScript or Rust. But I thought, okay, I want to level up my character, PHP, all the way. PHP is unique. It fits all the stages of development. It is so easy to get into today too. So our kids can develop in PHP. That is so cool. It's followed me all along to today. I've been the newbie kid, the student, and today I'm a senior PHP dev. So let's talk a little bit about year 2000. We had PHP and styling and HTML all in one file, and we thought this was great code. I'm sorry, it's a bit blurry. But we had everything sort of together, and it was easy to code and also easy to get it very wrong and very bad. So obviously, I started feeling the pain of this solution because, I learned about include and about functions.php. So I made this functions.php where I had all the logic in, and I felt this was amazing. But obviously, it became too large. So I made functions2.php. And then I started doing separate files for header, footer, and config for less duplication. This is sort of the way we were programming back then, when you came from this kids thing of just doing. And a lot of us started like this. And of course, my little guest book got spammed, hacked, and I started looking into solution. So I learned about user input validation and escaping. These things that are so obvious to us today, we don't have to think about it because the frameworks do it for us. So our kids today don't get this experience. That is pretty cool. Obviously, I did some micro optimizations, and I needed more. I wanted to meet people like me. I was so alone. The people in school weren't like me, and I was super excited when I heard about IRC and this place where I could chat to people like me and finally find a place where I belong. So I chose my name, Michelle, as my nickname, And I got kicked for pretending to be a girl to get help quicker. That was not a great experience at 11 years old, where you thought you would be welcome and you're not. So some people actually thought I was an FBI agent, because that was more likely, somehow. Boobs who get to fuck off really hurt me. And all the guys online then, they were just joking, throwing fun jokes. Pseudo, make me a sandwich, ha ha ha. I was 11 years old, I didn't even have boobs. So the people online by then, they almost scared me away. And I isolated myself. I still loved programming, but I felt more alone than ever. So I isolated my code, and almost no one saw what I wrote. I didn't get the peer feedback. I didn't get these people to talk to, the excitement. I couldn't share it with anyone because the people I wanted to share it with the most, they kicked me out. So obviously, it led to something a lot of you experienced at some point. Self-doubt, wondering if my code was good enough. How was I supposed to know? But my parents, they were amazing. Without them, I would have left the community and I would not be a programmer today. I have this specific memory when I was 12 years old. My parents had an office in Serbia, and I was setting up all the computers. And in came a guy seeing this 12-year-old girl in a little red polka dress. Yeah, do you need help to turn on the computer? And my dad went ballistic. She knows way more about computers than you ever will. How dare you ask her this? And this guy felt so small. But the thing is, I wouldn't think a 12-year-old girl really knew everything and would try to be helpful too. But just never assume anything, and we will all be safe. But having a dad like that, it's if your parents support your kids. So the hobby stage, I'm sort of still in the hobby stage, I guess. But in the beginning, I joined the community again, pretending to be male. And I got such a nice reception. People talked to me, and we could talk about code, and it was great. But I never could be myself. But at least I could talk about code. So I made small bots and small websites. You know, all those IRC bots you had by then, and you showed what music you were playing. That was fun. So in 2004, PHP 5 came out. I hated object-oriented programming. It was the worst thing ever. Why take away these functions of PHP? It doesn't make any sense. Why should you have this objects are for the real world? Why should we put the real world in? No, it didn't make sense. But okay, fine. I changed my database functions.php to database.class.php, wrapped it, called it object-oriented programming. Okay, fine. This is the way it didn't make sense. But around that time, autoloading came, and that, for me, truly changed my life, and it changed PHP for the better. This was one of the really cool features that came. And in 2006, I had my first paid project. I got paid essentially nothing, which was good because it was a web shop. I can make that in 3 days, no problem whatsoever. I actually dreamt in PHP. Not about the language, but my dreams were written in PHP. I didn't sleep for 3 days, which I could do because I was young. It was the worst code I ever written in my life. The web shop did not live long. I was still developing with FTP, sometimes directly on the server for small changes. This was the way we did stuff back then. I mean, except the professionals, they didn't. Except they did. So then I joined university, and I studied software engineering, with a specification on web development. And I learned that this object-oriented thing isn't that horrible. It's just that PHP was really bad at describing it to me. So I learned it by learning Java. And there was this book where they visualized objects. And I learned that I'm a visual learner. And by having this visualization, I got completely into this world. So my favorite course was design patterns and learning and feeling like an architect. And software engineer rather than just a coder, I felt like I was a professional, I can do this stuff. So obviously I over-engineered everything, made this abstract mess in PHP, applying my newfound knowledge, and I got completely lost in my spaghetti abstractions. But of course, around that time was the time in PHP where some frameworks came out. Someone else can do it better than me, let's use a framework. Send framework 1 by then. But MVC is fun, let's make my own framework. Everyone made your own frameworks, right? Yeah. It's fun. Computer science is awesome. It's truly amazing. So then, after my studies, I could not find a job. It turns out, even if you've been doing this as a hobby forever, without any real-life experience except a 3-day web shop, you don't get a job. People want experience. And how do you get experience if everyone wants experience? It's impossible, right? It's this thing in our industry that doesn't make any sense. So I did what everyone else does. I started my own business. And it went great. Because people in the PHP community, they're amazing. A little bit before this time was also when I started being me online. And I got welcomed, mostly. So the first time in the US, I had a diversity sponsorship, and I got to learn to know so many people in the PHP community that brought me further. And then there was, I lived in the Netherlands at the time, and there was this guy, Rafael Doms, who was running Amsterdam PHP at the time. And he more or less pushed me on stage in a very friendly way, don't worry, and said, okay, speak. And I did. And that's how I got into speaking, even though I still have stage fright. So people in the PHP community, they do these amazing things. I started a user group in Groningen in the Netherlands, where people still have that user group today. On the first meetup, it was just me and another guy. So don't be afraid to start something, even if there's no one else around. And then my first conference experience changed everything. So this was this guy on IRC, Scoop, Stefan Koopmans-Rapp, and he said, you should go to this little conference in Utrecht. And in there, I met so many amazing people because he was the glue that introduced me to all these people. And it was so easy to feel starstruck. I know some people in here, they're like, oh, wow, this person, Derek wrote XDebug, and I can't talk to him. And it's these kinds of things where people get afraid to talk to each other. You shouldn't. It's amazing to talk to the people that you're starstruck about. It's cool. And Stefan introduced me to people. And yeah, introduce each other. So around that time, I still felt sort of an outsider. I went to this conference, was more or less the only woman there, and it still didn't feel great, but I was more included. So I found this group founded by 2 amazing women in the US, PHP women. And I started talking to people in there, and they had the same experiences as me, and it was great to finally feel like I belonged somewhere, and people, they knew what to do. So this was great. And eventually I got more and more involved in PHP Women, and I started running PHP Women with Liip. And we went to conferences, and we had a booth, and it wasn't always a great experience. We need more women in code, in PHP. The code would be so much cleaner. Ha 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 ha, thank you, troll. It's these kinds of comments, it hurts sometimes. And when I left PHP Women, I sort of felt this regret of losing something great. I lost it because I had to try so hard to keep PHP Women alive when all I wanted to do was code. So why should I have to do all this work for us to feel included? Why should a minority have to work just to be part of a group? It doesn't make any sense. Don't have us do work just to feel included. So I wanted to work with people around that time, so I stopped my own company, and I said, okay, let's go to interviews. Our devs think women can't code. Can you prove them wrong? No, thank you, bye. So during this process, there were some good interviews, some bad interviews. And then I found Liip in Switzerland. My colleagues. That was over 10 years ago now. And I still stay there because they didn't make me feel like a woman who codes. They made me feel like a programmer, like someone who is respected for what they do. And they have been supporting me through this process all along. They're amazing. I wish there was more companies like this. So at Liip, I started this culture of open source. And we have this culture when I started at Liip where we would contribute our spare time to open source. Because that's what we do. And I was at this conference, PHP Benelux, I think. It doesn't matter which conference it was. There was the opening keynote. I had never contributed to open source before. So then there was this thing. Who in here ever contributed to open source? Stand up. Stand up. Who in here ever contributed to open source? Stand up. You don't have to stand up. Thank you. Thank you. And when you sit there between these amazing people that contributed to open source, that is also so much taller than me, you feel extremely small. And you feel this sense of shame for not having done it. And that's not great. But it shouldn't be that way. We should contribute to open source because we want to make something great, not because we're ashamed to do so. This is rhetorical. Who in here got paid to do so? I mean, not... yeah, proudly. That's cool. It's something to be proud about. But it shouldn't be something to be proud about because I believe that it's not on individuals and employees to keep open source alive. The people and companies that financially profit from open source are the ones that should pay for it. So if you're, like me, a little bit shy and afraid of contributing to open source like I was back then, do not ever feel guilty for not doing free work. If your employer doesn't pay it, you don't have to do it. You have better things to do. Unless it's your passion, then go for it. But you don't have to. Don't feel guilty. So there was this community person that started being like, okay, I'll start looking at your code, see what you're doing, and he basically was doing code reviews privately to get me into this thing. And that was great. It got me over imposter syndrome to the point that I dared to contribute to open source. So my first open source contribution was adding a GitHub icon to a page. And somehow I screwed that up. But Linux at the time gave me some constructive feedback, and it was great. The thing got merged. And woohoo, yay, great. And no one blamed me for screwing that up. Community works. Woohoo! It's real. I still feel like the community is amazing. And sometimes I talk about that in the past, how it was amazing. But I see all of you here, and you're amazing. Where are we now? Is PHP dying? No, I don't think so, even though I heard someone whisper yes as a troll. I don't think PHP is dying. But when you look at this question in the beginning of the talk, how many people did use PHP 4 and all of these things? The fact that so many people raised their hand means that our community is aging. We're not getting so many new devs. We should have more new devs. And they're not choosing PHP anymore. Why should they? JavaScript is everything you need. Thank you. That's the no. We have to talk about PHP where all the other devs are. We have to talk about how awesome it is. And we also have to talk about PHP as a full stack technology, because that's what it is today. Laravel Livewire is fantastic. This great thing where you can use Laravel to write JavaScript, except you don't have to touch a line of JavaScript. Amazing. Or Symfony live components, since I'm a Symfony dev. I don't have to use JavaScript to do the validation anymore. All those small things where you have to put JavaScript in your code. Why should you? Use PHP, use Twig, there's no reason to use Java. Okay, fine, there is reasons to use JavaScript. But we can write good code, full stack code in PHP. Symfony and Laravel are super cool. They're not just PHP frameworks, but with Livewire and live components, they are full stack frameworks. So these circles sort of represent how I feel in the community sometimes. I'm a Symfony developer, and it's so rare that I talk to WordPress developers, Drupal developers, except at work. Because we live in these isolated groups, and we sort of hate on the other frameworks. And we shouldn't. We should learn from each other, because it's so amazing what we all do. And learning from each other makes everything so much better. So we should be one big community circle. And for a while, I thought we didn't have it. But in the light of some really sad news, I saw the community get together. Ryan Weaver is a guy in SymfonyCast who sadly got diagnosed with brain cancer. But I saw people contribute to his future, to his family's future, from all around the PHP community, from Laravel, Symfony, everything. And that's when I thought, okay, in times where it really matters, we got the community, it's here, and we support each other. And that's amazing. So, some lessons learned. This was me before testing. Stop collecting underpants. Okay, I'll probably have to explain this one. So there's this episode in South Park where there's this underpants gnomes, and they collect underpants. That's what they do. Because collecting underpants leads to profits. And that's great. But what's the thing in between? So if underpants in this anecdote is information, a lot of us go to these conferences and we collect information. We collect, we see all these talks to profit. But then we don't do anything with it. So I urge you all to write things down from the talks you see and try things out to actually profit from the information you learned today. It's important. Another lesson learned that was sort of a painful lesson was that in a previous edition of this talk, I'm afraid to say I made a very ableist statement. I said, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. And then I got diagnosed with long COVID in 2020. You can definitely not do anything if you put your mind to it. Sometimes life gives you more lemons than you can make lemonade. I've always been an optimist, but optimism only gets you so far. Sometimes you have to say no, you have to ask for help, and you have to just stop. It's okay, you can't do everything. And the people who say you can, they haven't lived yet. And never assume anything about people. This little 12-year-old girl setting up all the computers, she might be better at PHP than you. Who knows? So never assume anything about people, online or offline. Always have an open mind. No matter how a person looks, how they present themselves, always have an open mind. And I sometimes learn the most from our junior devs because they have new ways to look at problems. I learned that we are all ignorant in one way or another. There are things that we don't know. But it's important to keep talking about this, to keep educating each other so that education is widespread. It's nothing wrong with discovering that you did things wrongly. In fact, it's a true sign of growth when you discover that and you learn from it. That's when you know you're truly grown as a person. I also learned the painful way with PHP women that a community needs several people to run well. So if you have a user group, if you have something, make sure there's several people doing this thing so that if one person goes away, the entire group doesn't die. And please, don't let the minority groups do the work for us to feel welcome. Don't do it. Please educate each other and make us feel welcome without us having to do more than code. And it's time for you to step up and me to take a step back. If there's no user group near you, you're it, Cal Evans always says. And then someone tells me, yeah, you said this in your keynote, you should start a user group. And I won't, because my neighbors are literal cows. But if you live somewhere where you have people as neighbors, you can do this. It takes a place to be. You can talk to your local companies, and you can do it because it builds community, and we need community. Community and diversity initiatives only truly works when it's a joint effort. And the thing is that new devs, they perhaps need community more than us seasoned devs. We sometimes forget all the things we gained from community. Where we are today, a lot of us has the community to thank for it. And those new devs, they need this community. They need phpday. They need all those user groups. We need the new devs. So, growing up, I wrote might be, but there will be growing pains. Unlike most RPGs, there's no end level. We never stop learning. And that's one of the amazing things that puts PHP and programming an RPG in different places, is that an RPG usually finishes, but here, there's no end level, and it's great. PHP is better than ever. We do these amazing things. So don't be afraid to grow. Be kind and mentor new devs. And really, really importantly, speak positively about all PHP frameworks. I can't say this enough. And growing up is best done together because community works. Thank you.